the bustling streets of Lagos, Ibukun seemed to have it all: a thriving career, a loving husband, and a bright future ahead. But behind closed doors, her world was a nightmare. Bruises were hidden under her long sleeves, and silence became her armor. One fateful night, after a violent argument, Ibukun's life hung by a tree. What happened next will leave you speechless, and it's a story too rich to ignore. Ibukun was the kind of woman everyone admired. At just 28, she worked as a senior accountant in a high-profile firm and had married her university sweetheart, Kunle. To the outside world, their life was the perfect picture of success. Their cozy apartment in a middle-class neighborhood in Lagos often echoed with laughter when visitors came around. But what no one saw was the tension that lingered after the guests left. Kunle had changed dramatically after they got married. It started small at first. It was little things like side comments about her staying late at work, how she dressed, sharp words, and blame for things that made no sense. He's just tired from work. My Kunle is not a violent man, she whispered to herself after he raised his words at her for forgetting to warm his dinner. This isn't who he is, she repeated. Even after the first slap came, Ibukun brushed them off, thinking, marriage is a bad compromise, right? But soon, the comment turned into yelling, and the yelling escalated into something far worse. Kunle's anger had a dangerous edge, and Ibukun found herself walking on eggshells every day. One night, Kunle came home late from work, reeking of alcohol. Ibukun has prepared his favorite dish, jollof rice with fried plantains, hoping it will lighten his mood. Instead, he slammed the plate off the table. Is this how you show respect? Making the rice too spicy? Or is it because you earn almost as much as me now? Kunle said angrily. Before Ibukun could explain, his hand connected with her cheek. The slap was loud, but her scream was silent. She bit her lip, refusing to cry. Crying would only make him angrier. The next morning, Ibukun covered the bruise with makeup and told her colleague she had tripped on the stairs. No one questioned her story. After all, Ibukun was the cheerful, reliable one who would suspect anything. But as months passed, Kunle's outbursts grew more frequent and violent. Ibukun thought about confiding in her best friend, Ada, but fear held her back. What if Ada judged me? What if she told others? What if Kunle found out? Ibukun thought. The shame and fear were paralyzing. 6 months later, Ibukun's secret was dangerously close to unveiling. One evening, after an exhausting day at work, she returned home to find Kunle in a dark mood. He accused her of flirting with a male colleague after seeing them in a restaurant. His jealousy had no limits, and Ibukun knew where the argument was headed. But this time, Kunle didn't just stop at words. The sound of breaking glasses filled the room as Kunle threw a bottle against the wall. You think I'm a fool? Don't you? He shouted, cornering her. When she tried to escape, he shoved her hard against the kitchen counter. Ibukun's head struck the edge, and for a moment, everything went black. When she got up, Kunle was gone. and the room was silent except for the sound of rage. Blood trickled down her forehead. Ibukun stared at her reflection in the mirror, barely recognizing herself. This was the moment she realized she could not keep pretending. Kunle's rage would kill her one day, and no amount of makeup could hide the secret. She packed a small bag that night, but as she reached for the door, something stopped her. What if Kunle came back and found her gone? The thought of what he might do was terrifying. Ibukun sat on the edge of the bed, frozen in indecision. She felt trapped, like a bird in a cage, with no escape. The turning point came 2 weeks later, when Ibukun received a call from Ada. Her friend sounded concerned. Ibukun, I know something is wrong. You have been distant, and I saw that bruise last week. Please talk to me. At first, Ibukun denied everything, but Ada's persistence broke through her defenses. She finally told her friend the truth. Sobbing as she recounted months of abuse, Ada was horrified but supportive. You can't stay there, Ibukun. You have to leave before it is too late. With Ada's help, Ibukun found a women's shelter in the city. The shelter provided a safe space and legal assistance to victims of domestic violence. But leaving Kule was not easy. When he realized she was gone, he bombarded her with calls and messages, alternating between begging for forgiveness and threatening her. One night, Kule showed up at the shelter, pounding on the gates and demanding to see his wife. The staff called the police, who arrested him for harassment. It was the first time Ibukun felt a glimmer of hope. With the shelter's support, Ibukun filed for divorce and secured a restraining order against Kunle. It wasn't an easy journey. She faced judgment from some family members and struggled with feelings of guilt. But over time, she began to rebuild her life. Months passed, and Ibukun slowly started to reclaim her life. Therapy helped her process the trauma, and for the first time in years, she no longer woke up with fear gripping her chest. The women at the shelter became her support system, each with their own story of survival, resilience, and healing. With Ada's encouragement, Ibukun applied for a transfer at work and moved to a new apartment in a different part of Lagos. She was determined to start afresh and to build a life where she was no longer defined by Kule's anger or the scars he has left behind. But healing wasn't lenient. There were days when a sudden noise or unexpected messaging from an unknown number sent her spiraling back into fear. She struggled with self-doubt, wondering if she had made the right choice. After all, society often painted women like her as failures, women who could not keep their homes. But every time those thoughts crept in, she reminded herself of the night she nearly lost her life. Survival wasn't a failure, it was courage. One evening, as she sat on her balcony overlooking the bustling city, Ada called Ibukun. Have you thought about sharing your story? Ibukun hesitated. I don't know, Ada. What if people judge me? What if they say I should have stayed? They will say what they want. But think about the women still trapped in silence, in fear. You made it hard. Maybe your story can help someone else find their way too. That night, Ibukun drafted a blog post titled The Perfect Illusion, My Journey to Freedom. With trembling fingers, she hit publish. She didn't expect much, but within days, messages poured in. Men she had never met shared their own stories of abuse, fear, and survival. Some were still trapped, seeking guidance. Others had escaped, but were battling shame. Ibukun realized she wasn't alone, and neither were they. A year later, Ibukun stood in front of a group of women at a support center, sharing her story, not as a victim, but as a survivor. She had found her voice and with it, a new purpose. She partnered with NGOs that advocated for domestic violence victims, using her experience to educate others on red flags, legal rights, and most importantly, the power of living before it was too late. She pushed for workplace policies that supported women in abused relationships, ensuring that no woman had to suffer in silence like she once did. One evening, as she walked into her apartment, she caught a glimpse of herself in the mirror. Question, staring back wasn't the broken woman who once hid bruises with makeup. It was a woman who had faced her worst nightmare and come out stronger. Ibukun's new life was full of challenges, but each day brought a little more strength. She no longer flinched at every loud noise or sudden movement. The memories of Kunle's rage were still there, but they no longer controlled her. Ibukun had found something more powerful than fear: hope. As she continued to speak at support centers and partner with NGOs, she met women who were still in abusive relationships, women who were scared to leave, and others who struggled to rebuild. But she also met women who had left and had begun to strive. They were living proof that there was still life after abuse. One rainy afternoon, Ibukun was sitting in a cafe when she received an unexpected message on her phone. It was from Kunle. The message was short but loaded with emotion. I miss you. I know I've done horrible things. I want to make things right. Her hands shook as she stared at the screen. Part of her felt anger flared up. Another part of her felt pity for the man who had once been the love of her life. She could almost hear his voice, soft, apologetic, like it used to, before the rage took over. But she knew better now. Ibukun didn't respond. Instead, she blocked his number. No more contact, no more false promises. She remembered the woman she had been when she left Kunle, the woman who had thought she had nowhere to go. But now, as she sat in the cafe, watching the rain wash the streets, she realized how far she had come. She was stronger than ever before. She had her voice back. Ibukun continued her work with survivors of domestic violence, helping them find their path to safety and healing. One day, a young woman approached her after a seminar. "Thank you," the woman said, her voice trembling. "You saved me. I was too scared to leave him. But after hearing your story, I know I can. I can live." Tears filled Ibukun's eyes as she hugged the young woman. In that moment, she understood that her journey had a purpose. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was living, striving, and helping others do the same. Ibukun didn't need to look in the mirror to know who she was anymore. She had found her identity in the fight for freedom, in the courage to live, and in the hope she offered to those who needed it most. The perfect illusion of her past was gone, but in its place was something far more beautiful: a life lived authentically, with purpose and peace. Ibukun had finally risen from the ashes, stronger than she ever imagined. And the best part, she had learned that the power to heal was within her all along. Domestic violence is a silent epidemic that thrives on secrecy and fear. Ibukun's story is a reminder that speaking out can save lives. If you or anyone that you know is going through domestic violence, please seek help and speak out.